Hello, welcome to Chess with Simon. I'm Simon. There's good news and bad news. The bad news is that it's raining, which means I can't take the dog out, although it may stop at some point, but it's pretty wet out there. The good news is we can stay inside in the warm during this lockdown and we can review the games of the Cowley OCA Blitz chess tournament, and we have a real corker coming up. This is tui1 versus Phil Haywood. Phil Haywood's a super strong player, plays for City, he's really good, important part of the Oxford chess scene. tui1 plays for Cowley. If you'd like to reveal your identity, please do write it in the comments. You may be a junior, you may not want to reveal your identity, which is absolutely fine, but we're always curious to know if you want to say who you are. So we're going to have a look at this game with Phil. It's a really interesting game, lots going on. Let's have a look. So d4, f5, Dutch defence. AlphaZero plays the Dutch defence, and it's, over the years, people have been suspicious of the Dutch defence because it creates weak squares around the king. My father always taught me, don't move your king's bishop's pawn too early. I suppose there are comedy checkmates when you move the g pawn, move the e pawn, and the queen comes to h5 and it's checkmate. It's risky, but actually it's totally sound. White plays an offbeat line, but actually if you look at it, it's the engine's favourite. This is actually the main line of the engine. Bishop g5. I mean, the point is the bishop's striking at thin air, but all these moves that attack the bishop, like moves like h6, they're fine, but they create weaknesses around the king. In fact, look, should we just for some humour look at the engine line? h6, queen h4, g5. This does not trap the bishop. Bishop g3, because after the attempted trap f4, there's e3. So you take that. Yay, it's checkmate. This didn't happen in the game. The point is, this clever bishop move can be tricky. That's the real point. Phil plays g6. And now another tricky move, pawn h4. So I suppose at some point... So right now, the h pawn is pinned. So if white had two moves, white could play h5, takes on g6. And there's no take back with the h pawn because it would drop the rook. Now the h pawn's not pinned. Bishop on g7 brings out the knight. And now just pushing that bishop away. Again, that's the engine choice. Bishop f4, knight f6. Seems very sensible. Now the engine's gone crazy and said knight e5 is a super move. White played bishop e5, and black put the question to the bishop and said, right, you're going to take that knight then? And the knight took. Bishop takes back. Now, so this is pretty equal, although I have to say the black king side looks a bit drafty. Black has got the two bishops and there's no immediate threat to the black king side. I mean, that d6 pawn is covering e5. White just developed sensibly, e3, knight c6, bishop c4, going right through those weak squares around the king. So black can't castle now, not immediately anyway. e6 blocks, knight c3, just developing another piece. So I like white here, although the engine slightly prefers black. Queen e7, engine move. Maybe preparing queenside castling, I suppose. One would reason, also defending the pawn in e6. Queen e2, perhaps with the same sort of ideas, queenside. Bishop d7, it really looks like queenside castling now. Knight b5, so straight in for the fork on c7. Black castles defending c7, and it's just worth checking that a7's defended as well. And having gone h4 on the king side, we're going to go a4 on the queen side. Basically, let's just get the rook's pawns moving, really, attacking. Black plays d5 here, which is a nice solid move, and also forcing the bishop to move. The engines right now prefer black. Bishop d3. I can't see white has any immediate problems. I suppose my concern would be where's the white queen going, because actually the queen side for white isn't as safe as the black queen side. And then black just opening the centre, really good. So takes. I would take on e5 and so would the engine. I'm not claiming I always say what the engine says. Black king running. Sensible. It's a better square. And as Fisher says, you never know when lightning might strike. And here comes the lightning in the form of the pawn, a5. And black, I guess, just trying to open up the file onto the king with the queen in front of it. If you can put a rook there as well. If black can put a rook onto the e file, that would be lovely. Now it drops a pawn, but the engine doesn't want to take that pawn. But it drops a pawn. White defends it again. That makes that h-pawn useful by defending the bishop. And that bishop's quite a sort of thorn inside the black position. Takes away a lot of squares. But black's pinning the knight. The white knight, which reduces white's options. This is brave. I mean, of course, an exchange of queens is no threat to white, but I'd be nervous about opening a file onto my king. I guess white just assumes there'll be an exchange of queens. Yeah, okay. Now, the king isn't that under threat, but it still looks frightening to me, even with the queens off. There are still two rooks on. Black's got these two bishops. I'd be a bit nervy about this. So what do you think the idea is between knight and knight h4? I suppose the idea is to defend the bishop on g6, take back with the knight. Yup, that was the idea. Now you've got this check, and actually now I think the king is a bit short of options. So strictly speaking, there's only one legal move that doesn't lose the whole game immediately. King f1. Check, king running. It's not a crisis, but I mean, white has dropped a knight on. White's dropped a knight, but black's dropping a bishop. So black solves this problem by sacking an exchange and liquidating the knight that would have taken the bishop on f4. So now what's white going to do? White takes back and allows black to take. So now black has the two bishops and a rook versus the two rooks. White's trump is this advanced pawn, which got further advanced after the combination, but the engine says 0.0. I mean, I would take black in this position because I don't think the pawn's that dangerous. Pawn g3, hitting the bishop. Bishop comes back to a defended square. Pawn f4, getting the pawns moving. And actually now, that pawn's going to connect with the advanced pawn, so I think this is a useful set of ideas. And now white hoovers off another pawn, and actually the engine starts to like what white's doing. So what's the material? So it's materially, I would say this game is equal, because white has two pawns and a rook versus the two bishops. But I've got to say on the material, I really like black, but I suppose this advanced cluster of three pawns on the king side is too much of an asset. Check by the bishop using these two bishops together, really beautiful. King g2, check by the rook, king here. Black has all sorts of options here. Another check, put a pawn in the way, check. Let's look at the time. 33 seconds plays 40 seconds. So this is just blitz bullet chess. You know, this is just really fast, put lots of checks in, create lots of threats. The king runs this way. Now, very sensible by black, just creating some air for the king. White takes it away again. So in other words, by creating air, what I mean is reducing the threat of a back rank checkmate. Now, the bishop can always block on c8, but you know that bishop might not be there forever. But white takes it away again. You know, black has 20 seconds here, so this is just very instinctive and it's sort of like how quickly can you move the mouse territory. I mean, there is an increment. So it's not like, you know, it's not just about dexterity. Pawn c6, check at the back, king there. Now pinning that bishop. Black breaks the pin, white accepts a liquidation, but now all of a sudden those pawns do look like a real threat. So one step away from queening, has to stop it queening. Push with tempo, bishop has to stay on the diagonal. Rook attacking that black bishop. There's a check there, king has to stay in touch with the bishop. Now bringing the king up, which is very sensible in the endgame. Now the rook's coming around to attack that bishop on g8. King's coming to stop the trouble. But the rook is supporting the f6 pawn. These pawns have now joined up, and now it looks like, I mean, now it's pretty slow to the party maybe, but it looks like Black's got real problems here. I mean, the engine says it's gone, but even in a human game, Black's got 6 seconds, okay? Black moves the bishop, and then White finds this really cool move. So the issue is not that it's a fork. The issue is it's a check and a discovered attack on the bishop. So it is a fork. And actually, I wouldn't even let this... I'd worry about letting these pawns go because they're so powerful just for a mere bishop. But the engine really likes this move, and it was found instantly by White, picking up the bishop. And now I guess it's just gone because although Black can finally liquidate these naughty pawns, White's got this check, taking here, and then this pawn's going through. Black resigned rather than just constantly flick the pieces around. So, what a great game this was by tui1 against a super strong player. And next we will look at one of Phil's games.